Guys, what is up? My name is Kelly and welcome to part 2 of our t-shirt quilt and sort of sew along. I mean, you could be doing it at the same time. T-shirts quilts are so individualized. It kind of depends on what kind of t-shirt you have. That determines the quilt you make. So it would be kind of hard to do a quilt along, but hopefully you found the first video helpful. I got a lot of good responses about the interfacing, and I'm excited on my next one to try the 944. Is it 944 or just 44? I don't know. The lightweight interfacing. So we're gonna try that on the next one. But these are the ones I did. I've used the SF 101. So anyway, today we're basically going to complete the whole front of the quilt. So you can, again, there are no rules. I mean, you're going to hear me say that a million times, but you can take your t-shirts and you can simply sew them all together and end up with a big square, quilt it, bind it, you're done. But mostly what you'll see is people do at least sashing around all of them. I'm going to actually sash around each individual square, and sashing is just a fancy word for strips of fabric, of just quilt cotton. So I did, this is my original plan. I've changed it just a little bit. I don't know if you can see, but I originally had my sashing as 3 inches wide. I actually changed it to 2 for a couple different reasons. Mostly I just thought the 3 was too thick looking. And then last night, at 3 o'clock in the morning when I do my best thinking, I was like, maybe I'll just sew them together. I won't do any sashing. It'll be quicker. This particular customer is a young man, and he wants the quilt, and he wants a nice quilt, and he's not going to be picky. We didn't even talk about this, but so I was like, it had to be quicker to be easier. I priced kind of without it. But I woke up this morning, I had a pretty rough start to the day, nothing major, but I was kind of bummed. And then I had some other things get taken off my plate. And I was like, you know what? I don't need this to be quick and easy. I need to do some therapeutic sewing, and putting the sashing in is going to kind of extend the life of this project. So, and I just think it'll look nicer. I personally like it. My next one is going to be a collage, so it won't have the sashing in between. It'll just have it around the perimeter. So again, on this one you can see I've got sashing in between each, and then I've got long sashing here, and then the whole perimeter. Again, that you just base that on what size you want your quilt to be. I think my measurements are going to stay the same, because even though I took off 1 inch on these, I'm going to add 1 inch to the outside border. Maybe. I guess we'll see when we get there. But he wanted gray, so I went ahead and went with this. It's not a solid gray, obviously, but I liked the stripes, and I thought that was kind of fun for boy shirts. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna turn you around and hopefully you guys can see me a little bit better, but let me get a finished strip. Basically what I do is I start by working in rows. So I've got this one done, this one done, this one done, this one done, and we're about to do this one. And all I'm doing is these little sashes here. So my first tip, let me show you one that's done. So here's a completed row, and we're just doing that 5 times because we have 5 rows. So see how we've got that sashing in between? And then once we get all the rows done, we'll, and it kind of depends. You could do columns first. It sort of depends on what direction your sashing is going in. So Like mine, these are my longer strips, but if for some reason you did longer strips this way, then you would do your, you would do rows first. No, I'm sorry, you would do columns first and then work on rows. But mine have the shorter here, so we're working in rows. And what I did, this is my number one tip, is I cut, so the height of all of my squares, you know, they're different widths, but the height is 12.5. What I did with these strips is I cut them a little bit longer. And that's because it makes it easier to square everything up. See how those kind of overlap on the edge? So I cut them all at 2.5 because I wanted them to end up 2, and so that factors in our seam allowance. So 2.5 wide, and then I did about 13, maybe 13 and a half long. I would give yourself at least a half an inch, maybe a full inch, depending on how much of the fabric you have to work with. I have a whole bolt of this fabric, so anyway, I'm going to turn you around so you can see this a little bit better and how we sort of build the rows. Rows, columns, rows. We're building rows. All right, so we have the first square of that row, and I like to go ahead and line it up on my cutting mat just to make sure it's nice and square. And then you're going to take your piece, your strip of quilt cotton, and you're going to line it up right here. This first one is very easy. Again, you want a little bit of overhang on the top and the bottom. And then I like to use clips rather than pins. And there's 2 different kinds. You can use these kind, or you can just use hair clips. I use these hair clips for bags a lot, but this is a little too thin. You're probably not going to have the best of luck keeping everything straight with these. So these clips you can get them at Joann's or Walmart. They can be pretty pricey. I got these at, is it Waywack? Wawack? Let's see. This place. And they're far cheaper. And the quality has been fine. So you really want this to line up. Let me turn it so you can see. You know, get this as lined up as you can. Again, your top and bottom doesn't matter very much. You can kind of keep it in place up here too. But get you a few clips on there. And then we'll take it over to the sewing machine. Sorry, this is hard to do while I'm trying to film. Usually a little quicker. So you take it over to your sewing machine and you're going to do a 1/4 seam allowance. Now, I currently on my machine have a 1/4 inch foot. You don't need that. I had one I have one, and so I thought, oh, that's fun. I'll use that. Let me see if you can see it. So, but you don't need it. Just make sure you don't want to really go much wider than a 1/4 inch because your seam will be too bulky and you don't want to have to cut it down. Can you see? Well, here, let's just pop it off. So this is a 1/4 inch foot, and all that really means is this section right here is a 1/4 inch. So I can, or not, no, that's a lie. From the needle to this edge is a 1/4 inch. So I know I can run the edge of the 2 fabrics right along that edge. Now, if you have good markings on your machine, or even if you don't, you can lay down a piece of blue tape or something to give yourself a nice solid or a nice straight 1/4 inch line. But you do want to keep it as straight as possible, because if you don't, you'll end up with a huge mess on your hand. Although, you know, it's usually recoverable. So let's just sew this real quick. Sorry, my camera's kind of in the way. Oh, what do I got going on here? It's all, I swear to you, every time I go to film, I have issues. Look at that. We bunched up. This is also, it would be if you have a walking foot. A walking foot is really good for this, piecing together quilts. My machine has one built in, but I've never been able to figure out how to use it. And that's a real problem. It just, kind of what just happened happens, but it happens like tenfold. I'm so far away from my pedal because of the camera, and I'm going kind of slow. So there are different schools of thought. Some people will tell you not to backstitch here and at the top. I do, just because I always backstitch, and so I think it has something to do with puckering or causing issues, or I don't know. I just backstitch. But so here's our first piece attached to some sashing. I'm going to iron it, and then I'll show you how to do the next one. Okay, so the next one becomes a little trickier because, and yes, by the way, I did not interface this piece very well. I'm off a little bit, but it's gonna be okay. So this becomes a little trickier. So you can't line up with the top here, remember, because you are, you've got some overhang. So you want to line up with the top and the bottom and with this edge. And in doing it that way, you then can square it up once it's all sewn. So I may not be able to do this with my current setup and with the fact that so, you know, this kind of goes back to our last video about the importance of interfacing. I don't know how I got so off. I think I only had one, this one, that got so far off. But we're lining up our top and bottom, keeping everything straight where we can. And then, we're a little off here too. It's a little hard to see my gray and white stripes up against my gray and white cutting mat, but okay. So see how, I know it's hard to tell, but we're lined up on this edge and this edge and this edge, and then we still have our overlap here. So we're gonna go do the same thing. We're going to sew it at a 1/4 inch seam allowance and press it. All right, so we have 2 of the pieces together with the sashing in between. I did forget to mention that it is really important that you iron in between each one. It just helps keep everything lined up. Same with the backstitching. People have very strong opinions about how you should press your quilt. This side I've pressed, this side I have not. Old school, I think, or I mean old and new, I guess. A lot of people like to press their seam open. I press mine to the side. It's just what I've always done. It's what works for me. On a t-shirt quilt, I press it in towards the quilt cotton because if you can see, you know, with the interfacing, the t-shirt is thicker than your quilt cotton. So if if you pressed it to this side, it would create a lot more bulk than pressing it to that side. Now, the only time I might do something different is if I had a really, really white sashing. I might want to press it to the side, or I would probably actually press it open. Depending. In the past I've done like denim or really thick shirts, and obviously those you just can't press them open. So I just press them to the side. You do what works best for you. Again, I don't have a strong opinion about it. It's just what I prefer to do. So I'm going to press this, and then I'm going to keep going and get us a full row. right, a little hard to see, but this is a whole row. And so the last thing that we need to do is we need to square up these ends. So again, the reason why I left it long is if you tried to, you know, nothing's perfect. At least if you're me, it's never perfect. So if I had cut this to the exact measurement, it would probably be a little off on either side, and it's still going to be a little off. But at least this way we can make up for some of that. So I just take a ruler, line it up with both shirts, and then cut off these little ends. So I'll go through and do that on both of these pieces, and then this row is done. All right, so I got my ends all squared up, and then that row is done, and I've just kind of been piling them up here, and they're in order, with this one being the top row. And so, no, I'm sorry, the bottom. So this is the bottom row. And now we need to do these pieces so that we can put all of our rows together. This is not correct. I had it written down as 46.5 long. Again, we're going to cut them longer than they need to be. But since I changed these to 2 instead of 3, it's actually, what, 44.5 that I need, but maybe I'll go ahead and cut it to just 46. Because again, just to leave a little bit extra on either end. And those, I may have to redraw this. I think those, I'm still going to do these as 2.5 so that it matches these. But then these on the bottom, I might make bigger. Actually, I'm pretty sure I'm going to. I'm going to make those bigger since we're taking away some of the length here. But so then I need 1, 2, 3, 4 that are, what did I say, 46 long. So let me go cut those. Okay, so if you're new to this kind of cutting, you want to avoid too many folds in your fabric. Because our pieces are so long, I do have to fold them once. But sometimes things don't cut as straight as you want them to, or you get, I'll show you in a minute. It'll still happen. It'll still give me a little bit of a crooked line, but we'll work that out. I am going to cut a straight edge here to get rid of the selvage. And then we're just going to cut at 2.5. I made this to where it's now going to be 46, which was maybe not a great idea because now I'm having trouble seeing my marks on my cutting mat, but because this is only 23. I'm sorry, I made them 48. Okay, so now, whoops, my rotary cutter is not that sharp. So now here's our pieces that are 46, 48, I keep saying 46 long, and we just need 4 of them. It didn't do too bad. Sometimes right where you folded it, you get a little bit of a divot. This one did absolutely fine. So again, you just want to make sure you don't fold it too many times if you can get away with it. If you can't, then you can, you know, compensate for that in several ways, but mostly within your seam allowance. So I'll cut another one at 2.5, and then, oh, did I just cut that at 2? Yeah, so I just messed that one up. So we'll cut the next one at 2.5, and then we'll do another 2.5, and then I'll decide how much of this I want to make the top and bottom. But I'll kind of just decide based on how much I have left, which I now have 2 inches less because I cut these wrong. Oh well. Okay, so in the end, I've got my 2.5, not two, 2.5 strips, and I've got 4 of those. And I went ahead and did this at 5.5, and there's 2 of those. That's for the top and the bottom. I had enough fabric for that, and it kind of makes it uniform, because even though this says 4, I'm actually going to make these 5 as well to make up for the inch I took off here in the middle. In retrospect, I often like to do my quilts, how do I explain it? So see how these end here on the edge? Sometimes I like to go ahead and make the top and the bottom now the longest piece, but again, there's no rules. I keep saying that. There's no rules. So anyway, these are just the 48 or whatever I did. And then I'll need 2 long pieces is all I have left to cut. But we're going to go ahead and sew these first. So it's basically the same thing. Now this one is my bottom. So I can go ahead and sew 2 on at once, because it's going to need one of the big ones. And so we'll sew that here. And then it'll need one of the skinny ones, and it'll go here. So same process, you sew, you press, you do the whole thing, then you square off your ends, or you can square your ends as you go. But then after that, you'll have all of your rows together, and we will do that through the magic of television. So I just have one more row to attach, but I wanted to show you guys a little tip for lining everything up. Like, you want these 2 to be lined up as best as you can. You know, you stare at it long enough, it's not perfect, but if you step away from it and look at kind of the big picture, you want these lined up as best as you can. So what I do, instead of starting my pinning here, like I don't, let's see, this is my last row. Okay, so I don't lay this down and line up these and start pinning. I start pinning, or clipping, I guess is the right word. I start clipping right here. So I take these and I make sure that these 2 edges are as lined up as they can be. Let's double check that. So scooch that over a little. And then I clip here first. Get that nice and clipped. Here's another section where I did not interface properly. And then you can move it to the next one. Do the same thing. Line these up. Kind of fold it up. And then everything in between should kind of line up, work itself out. Oops. So see how that one is now, we can clip all of this. And then this, you know, it doesn't really matter. I'm not, you know, just like we have to square up, oops, sorry, you can't see. Just like we have to square up these pieces, we'll be squaring all of this up. So if the ends don't match perfectly, it's not that big of a deal. But you would be pretty sad if you sew the whole thing and these don't line up as well as you want them to. because it's a lot to unpick. But just a quick little, again, little tip. The only other tip I have for sewing these is I do like to sew from the side that has the t-shirts. If you sew it from this side with the sashing, then you run the risk of your seams bunching up a little bit. So I like to sew from this side just so that I can see my seams the whole time. So let me sew this, and then I'll show you I'll show you where we are from this point. I may have to put it on the floor for you to see the whole thing because it's kind of big, but let's do that. Okay, so as you can see, that little trick got us lined up pretty nicely at both intersections there. So I said I would show you the whole thing, but it's a little tricky. It is getting there. All the rows are attached, and now all we have to do is square up our sides. And so similar to what we did before is, let's see if I can do this here. I don't have much of a space. What I like to do is find my square that is the shortest, if that makes sense. Let's do it like this. Hopefully you guys can see me. I'm going to take these and kind of fold it in half. Oops. Catching on something. So you can kind of eyeball it. All of mine are pretty, oh look, see, like this one's a little shorter than that one. We don't have anything that's dramatically different, so I think we're okay just to start at the top. But basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the longest ruler I have and use it to cut off these ends. Where is my long ruler? Oh, hang on. Here it is. Okay, so I'm going to try to overlap 2 shirts at a time, lining up my ruler here, and then just squaring that up. You can use your lines on your mat too, but if you have a long enough ruler, you can kind of see where everything should be. Let's make sure we're a little folded over up here, so let's fix that. Okay. There and there. And if you need to, so again, if you have one shirt that is dramatically shorter this way than the others, you can cut, all of your shirts to kind of match up with that. Just kind of split the difference. That way, they all line up when you're putting your side panels on. Let's see. So here I'm kind of splitting the difference. I know it's hard to see because you can't see, but I've got, like, this shirt comes a little under that, but that's not an issue. And we're just going to do that all the way down the quilt on both sides. Oh, you couldn't see me up there at all. And then you've got a nice straight line to add your side pieces of fabric. But if you end up having to cut all of these 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 an inch, it's not going to matter. Again, there are no rules, people. Just do, if your quilt ends up being slightly shorter on each side, if it's 14 inches instead of 14.5, who's going to know? Nobody's going to know. All right, I'm going to keep doing this. Okay, you can kind of see it laid out here on the floor. It's not perfectly straight, but, I've got all my edges cleaned up. And then now I just got to put my strip of fabric that goes this way. And one thing I didn't really think through using these stripes is I'm going to end up using a lot more fabric than I should probably have to, because I want my stripes to go this way, not this way. So this is like, I got to cut a piece that's like 79 inches long. And so I'm going to have to do it lengthwise on my fabric. Although, now that I've said that out loud, I'd have to do that anyway. So I guess the stripes really aren't an issue. Again, I have a bolt of this fabric, so I didn't really measure out how much I'm going to need. But I am going to cut them 5.5 inches wide, and they'll match the tops. You can't really see the tops right now because it's not laying straight. But when I get those on, I'll take it and I'll put it on my bed so you can see it a little bit better. I just kind of my floor is clean. I just threw it down here real quick just so I could check it. But let me go, and there's nothing special about that other than, again, I'm going to leave a little bit on each end to make it easier to sew on, and then all I got to do at the end is just clean it up. All right, so I said I was going to lay it out on my bed, but there is far too much cat hair for that. So let me see if I can kind of stand up and show you guys some of it. So when it's all finished, I'll share pictures of the finished product. But we have, oh, did you see my pajama pants? We have officially won half the battle, which is this quilt top. So next what we have to do is what's called the quilt sandwich, which is putting the batting in between this and the back of it. So that's what the next video will be. And then from there, all we got to do is quilt it. But this is kind of the bulk of the work. Everything else can be intimidating, but really isn't that bad. So I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. I know this was kind of a long video. Leave questions down below if you have them. And I will see you guys next time. Thanks. Bye.